Hi, welcome to Painting 101 Remastered. Today we're going down to Hobby Lobby to look at brushes and also cover a few more things about painting that I may have missed. Now, with the brushes, we couldn't cover every brush ever made, but we did cover a lot of the good ones and a lot of the bad ones as well, and showed different techniques and different types of brushes that you can use. So, with that said, let's head down to Hobby Lobby and take a look at brushes today. How you doing, everybody? Here we are at Hobby Lobby in local Mount Dora, Florida. Now, I don't know if you have a Hobby Lobby store near you, but you do have some type of art store. So what we're going to be talking today is about brushes and the different types of brushes that you can actually get. Now over here, and this is where things kind of really get a certain way where people have certain preferences. But if you are a beginner, somebody that just doesn't know if he wants to paint or doesn't know if he doesn't want to paint, you're going to want to start with a beginner set. Now I always suggest that you start out with a nylon set, because the very cheap bristle brushes, they just don't cut it, and they're not very good quality, and you're not going to get good strokes onto your miniatures or anything that you would be painting. These tend to bend and the bristles tend to break at times, and can be very tricky when you're trying to get a feel for things and adjust to working with paint for the first time. I always try to get myself a nice little 12 or 15 pack for $7.99 some nylon brushes. Now, nylon is not the greatest thing, and it's not something that you really want to use long term, but it will stay firm enough for a while so you can get a feel of things and start to develop a type of style and understand how paint flows, from thinning it to making it thicker and just keeping a good consistency. That's probably one of the most important things that you can ever do. Now, once you decide that you want to do something, that's when you want to move up to more intricate brushes or more expensive brushes and decide whether you like the nylon or you want to move on to actual real good bristle brushes. Some of the best brushes that you're ever going to get are the Princetons, the Robert Simmons, and the Winsors and Newtons. The problem is that these are the kind of things that you're going to want to buy one or two at a time, because just one of these brushes is $5.99 compared to getting a whole pack of 15 for, about $7. But these are such great bristle brushes. You don't want to get oil brushes because they're specifically for oils, and they'll hold the paint a certain way. You definitely want acrylic, because that is what you're going to be using to paint models anyways. You're going to be using an acrylic paint. And you can see that there's so many varying different styles from larger brushes, and a lot of these larger brushes can run up to about, this one's $14.99. But you're not going to find a better bristle brush than this. They also have like anglers and shaders and different types of brushes that you want to make sure that you have. Take, for instance, a lot of guys have asked me, why do I have this? Well, this type of fan brush is excellent for dry brushing, because you just get a little bit of paint on there and you're able to hit the miniature and hit the high points at a certain angle. These angle fan brushes, as they call them, are perfect for dry brushing. Your fine detail brushes really come down to what you feel that you can get the most control of. And control is the most important thing, is being able to control your paint, being able to control your brush and your strokes where you feel comfortable. There are some fine brushes, like this one, that has a long area, but when you get paint on it, it may be kind of tough for you to get a good feel for it because of how bendy it is and how flexible. A lot of times I try to gain as much control as I possibly can by getting a small edging brush with very little bristle or nylon on it. Something small that I can gain control of and get good sight on it and be able to manipulate the model and do the coverage that I need. Now, taking care of your brushes is almost as important as finding the brush that works for you. And making sure that you get the paint off is very, very important. I usually go with make sure that I have a brush washer instead of having a cup or a can or something just to put water in. And cleaning your brushes in water is perfectly fine. They have other solutions that you can use, but water's just as good. The idea and the thing that really works with a brush washer is that it has a staggered angle where you can take and really work the brush so the paint doesn't get up, as I'll show you in here, doesn't get up near the metal, because once it gets near the metal and gets embedded in there, it takes the brush and expands the brush. So you may have a tight area that you're painting with, like so, but if you get paint here, it's just like your hand. If you put something in your hand, eventually it's going to expand. Now the brush becomes too wide and you lose that pinpoint control that you want to have. Also, it doesn't hurt to get yourself a brush holder. It's a couple bucks at $5, but the thing is, you don't want to leave, if you're going to use beginner brushes, you don't want to leave them sitting in the water, because what will happen is, as they sit in the water, the wood will shrink or expand depending on your environment, and it'll actually separate from the brush itself, so the wood would come off the metal. Now, your really expensive brushes won't do that, but it will deteriorate and it will eat at the outer. What'll happen is, if you keep it in water, it'll get past the finish or the stain on the brush, and it'll work its way into the wood, and it'll start to peel away and ruin your $14 brush, and that's something you don't want to have. So you want to have a good brush holder that you can keep your points up so they're not touching any ground and bending, because when they bend, they'll stay like that for a while and start to form, and you don't want to keep them in a brush washer, because what's going to happen is the water's going to get in and deteriorate the brush itself. Now, they also have nice little kits like these, value brush sets. They come at $11, and they also come in bristle and nylon. Now these are pretty good and they're a step above what you would get for $7.99. So it's kind of a middle ground. So it really depends on your budget and how you can make things work. And finally, one of the most important things that you can have is a palette set. This is where you can pour your paint and mix it in different areas, or just keep your paint and keep the lid closed on your paint so it doesn't dry out. And just try to judge and get as much as that you think that you're going to need for that particular job. It may be a lot of coverage, you may want to put a little. Remember, it's better to put less than more, because you can always add more. And finally, another type of brush is the airbrush. But we're going to cover that in a total different video, because there's a lot that goes with an airbrush. And there's so many different types and kinds that it actually is an art into itself to learn how to do the airbrush. So, one last thing I wanted to cover about painting from the last episode that you guys may have watched is I never got to talk about testers. And I know I also left out Reaper and a couple other things. Now, I don't use Reaper, so I really don't have an opinion on it. But I can tell you enough about tester paints, because I've been asked by you guys quite a bit. Tester paints are an enamel paint. And the problem with an enamel paint is that it takes forever to dry. And it's really a very hard thing to work with. You have to use a thinner to clean your brushes. And the paint is very loose and very hard to control. It's very thinned out already, so you don't have to thin it out. And if you're going to thin it out, you're going to have to use their version of a turpentine. Very messy, very smelly, and a very long time to dry. Testers does make what they call is a acrylic and enamel, and they call it the Model Masters. If this is something that you can afford, they're not bad paints, they're not great paints, they're not something that I would use. And at $3.99, you're almost better going with the Valero, which is just a great paint to begin with. Now, we've also talked about, maybe not, a lot of you seem to be afraid about actually painting, period, and wanting to test on something, army men, things like that. Or something that you can find that's very rewarding is actually what we have here. We have models. Find yourself a model, a nice $10 model. Maybe pick out an airplane that might interest you, or something from Star Wars where you can get a Millennium Falcon. Well, they're a little expensive at 29 bucks. But most of these models are anywhere from $11 to $17 to $24, depending on what you want. Here's one for $4. You can just build yourself a little airplane and practice and learn how to just fine detail things and work on things and just cover areas. These things are just perfect to work on, and it's the type of plastic that mostly you'll be working with. So it'll give you a good feel for everything and help you develop a type of style and maybe have a feel, because most of painting isn't so much just getting paint on something. It's having a feel for it and knowing how to move the paint, how to make the paint flow. Like this young lady who likes to hijack every video, and I think you all know Victoria. But that's our big trip down the Hobby Lobby, and I figured I'd talk about brushes this week, and I wanted to finish up with paints. Next week we'll have a whole nother segment that we'll be talking about, and I hope you enjoyed this and get a lot from it. Please leave comments. Don't forget to upload us on Board Game Link. And as always, I'm Rob Orrin, and we'll see you soon.